Welcome to Car Titles. Today we're going to talk about the most common questions that we receive regarding vehicle titling. We're going to talk about the Vermont process, bonded titles, sales taxes, even some other lien release type method. So here's one of the most common questions we get. So how much does it cost to get a title? Well, in most states, the actual fee, the title fee, is about 20 or 25 bucks. That's what you pay to get a title. Now, that presumes that you have the prior title signed over to you. If you don't have the prior title, you may have to use some other title recovery methods. For example, you may have to go through the Vermont bill of sale method. In that case, there's going to be the fee for the Vermont registration, which is either $48 for a motorcycle or $74 for a vehicle. In addition, you may have to pay, if you do a bonded title, for a bond fee. And we'll talk about how much bond fees are. If you do all of the methods yourself, that's all you have to pay. You don't have to pay any company a fee to get you a title if you want to do the work yourself. There's companies out there that charge $500, $600, $700, $800 for title services. And if you want to pay somebody to do the work for you, that's fine. Just shop around and make sure that you're understanding what process they're using, so you make sure you get your title legally and that it's the method that's appropriate for your scenario. And also make sure you're not paying for something that you don't know you need to pay for. If you do decide you want to have title work done for you, there's many companies that do it. You'll see on our website we have a flat fee of $159, but that's an option. You don't have to pay any company to get you a title. You can do it all yourself. And the title fees at the DMV typically are $25, $30. Some states are a little more. Actually, some states are less. In the state of Texas, a title fee is $2. So you have to make sure you understand what you're paying for title fees. The next question we get quite a bit is the Vermont process. Does it work in my state? The email or the voicemail or the phone call says, hey, I want to do this Vermont process. Will blank state accept it? Does Michigan accept it? Does Nevada accept it? Does whatever state they're in? And the easy answer is, well, every state recognizes the documents of another state. It's not necessarily one particular state that's an issue. The reason why people run into problems is if A, there's something specific about that vehicle. It's reported stolen. It has liens against it. It has back taxes. Or it has a salvage title or something that requires an inspection. It's usually not the state. There are some individual clerks or reps in a DMV office that might not be aware of the registration process, the Vermont process, and they may not know how to process it. But it's accepted in all 50 states. There are reports occasionally of somebody running into trouble here and there, but it's not because that state doesn't accept it. Usually it's because there's something wrong with the vehicle or the rep doesn't have it. That's why we recommend when you do apply in your state using the Vermont process that you bring that Vermont bulletin that we provide. It's a PDF form. You'll see it in our other videos. There'll be a link in this one so that it explains to your state DMV that this document is their version of a registration ownership. It's like their title version. So does it work in my state? Easy answer is yes. Now, we can't speak for the DMV in every state. They can do whatever they want at the DMV, but it is a recognized document from a government agency that's usable in all 50 states, including DC. Third question we get is, can I file for an abandoned vehicle? When all else fails, or even not the last resort, sometimes the first resort, a client will ask, I'm just going to file for an abandoned vehicle. Well, as you've seen in other videos, abandoned vehicles are typically not finders keepers, right? There's a few instances where you can jump through a lot of hoops and file for an abandoned vehicle and somehow get ownership of it. Usually you have to auction it off or have it towed away. But abandoned vehicles are not finders keepers. So yeah, there are some processes for abandoned vehicles, and there's a lot of urban legends about, well, if you just find a vehicle and it's parked for 72 hours, you get to claim it. Usually not the case. Every state's a little different. But even when it is possible, theoretically, to go through an abandoned vehicle process, there's usually much easier, cheaper, faster ways to get a title than abandoned vehicle. Because abandoned vehicle means exactly that. It's abandoned by everybody, including you. You have to have it towed away and have the police or the towing company dispose of it. Sometimes they have to crush it and not allowed to even keep it as a vehicle. And if it is going to be abandoned, it has to be certified that it is abandoned by everybody. So the prior owner or lien holder has to sign off or fail to acknowledge that they want to make a claim to it. because the state DMV doesn't take it lightly if they're going to take away somebody's ownership rights of a vehicle. They want to make sure it's legitimate. So abandoned vehicle, in theory, it's possible, but in most cases, there's usually way better options of getting a title than abandoned vehicle. Another question we get about the Vermont process is, do I have to fill in Section 3 or Section 3B? There's a blank space on the Vermont application form. It's called Form VD119. And that Vermont application form has a Section 3B. And a lot of people ask, do I need to fill that in? The easy answer is, no, you don't have to fill it in. If you have your bill of sale with the seller information, that is where that information comes from. You can certainly write it in there. You don't want to put your name in there. You want to put the seller's name in there, but it's not required as long as you have your bill of sale, which you need to have anyways. So 3B, optional. Question 5, how much does a bond cost for a bonded title? For a bonded title on a vehicle, you'll have to get what's called a surety bond, which is like a guarantee certificate, kind of to entice the DMV to give you a title when you don't have the right paperwork. That's what the bond is for. The bond comes from a surety bonding agency. The one we recommend is probonds.com. They can provide instant quotes for bond fees, but typically it goes like this. A lot of times people get confused because the statute or the form says you have to put up a bond 2 times the value of the vehicle. Well, if the vehicle is worth $4,000, people think I have to pay $8,000 for a bond or put up $8,000. That's not how it works. The bond face value is 2 times or 1.5 times, whatever it is, the value of the vehicle, but the bond cost is usually $100, couple $100, depending on the value of the vehicle. It's a fixed price in every state. Once you have a value, the bond company will determine the fee that you pay to get that bond based on the value, and it's the same across the state. Every bond company has to post their fees with the state regulation board in order to do business in that state. And as an example, usually if a bond is for a vehicle $6,000 or less, the bond costs about $100. Goes up about 50 or 100 per thousand. So, the rule of thumb we like to use as rough estimate is if the vehicle is 6,000 or less, it's $100. If the vehicle is 10,000, it's 200, and then it may go up from there for more expensive vehicles. But in most cases, the vehicles are, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. That's how much bonds cost. It's not. You don't have to put up $8,000 or $9,000 to get a bond for a vehicle. Another question we get a lot is, can I get a title for an imported vehicle? And by imported, I don't mean a Toyota or a Honda that's imported. I mean a vehicle that was brought into the U.S., not originally sold in the U.S. Well, it depends. If that vehicle was legally imported to the U.S. through customs, EPA, DOT, all the different import requirements, it's eligible for a title because that VIN number has now been domiciled in the U.S. Driving a vehicle across the border from Canada or Mexico or just bringing it in on a boat doesn't import the vehicle. That means it's just visiting, right? So if somebody drives from Canada with their car and they decide they want to sell it in the U.S., they just can't sell it here because when they drove across the border, you signed a declaration that you're just visiting or you're going to be in the States for a week or two. So it doesn't automatically mean that that vehicle now is part of the U.S. It's kind of like citizenship. You can go on vacation to another country, but that doesn't mean you're a citizen of that country. Vehicles are the same thing. They have to go through a very specific import process. If it's not been through that process, it's not eligible for a title. If it has been through the process, then the paperwork you have from that process would normally be what you would need to get the title. And again, we're not attorneys. We're not giving you legal advice. So, check with export brokers, import brokers, more about that. If you do have, and a lot of times the question comes up is, well, there's a federal law that if the vehicle is 25 years old, it's exempt. It is exempt from some of the import requirements, but that doesn't mean that the state has to allow it. For example, there's a lot of these little Japanese mini trucks or military vehicles that can be imported legally because they're older than 25 years, but some states don't allow them on their roads. So just because it's imported doesn't mean it's eligible for a title. Question number 7, do I have to pay back taxes for California? This comes up a lot. If a vehicle has been unregistered or off the road in the state of California for a certain period of time, and other states do this as well, the back taxes can accumulate and can be attached to that VIN number, that vehicle identification number. And if a vehicle has back taxes piled up on it in California, that debt remains with the vehicle. Even if it's sold to another person, you can't re-register it until somebody pays those back taxes. Now, if you bring it out of state, let's say you go to Nevada or Texas or Oklahoma, you won't have to pay the back taxes in another state. But if it ever goes back to California, then the taxes will still be accrued to that VIN number. So it's kind of like a permanent lien on the vehicle for back taxes. California is one state. A few other states do the same thing. Another question has to do with the Vermont title loophole, and that is, can I drive the vehicle with the Vermont plates? Well, technically, the Vermont license plates are valid. They're registration. However, if you are a resident of another state, let's say you live in Montana, and you do the Vermont process and you get those plates, what you're supposed to do is use that registration to get a Montana title and a Montana license plate set. But sometimes people will think, well, I'll just put these Vermont plates on the car and slap it on and drive it around. You don't want to do that, because even though the plates are valid, your state has a law, almost every state does, that says if you are a resident of the state, you have to have registration in your state. And some people will say, well, I have 30 days or 60 days. Well, that's 30 or 60 days from the day you move to the state, not the day you register the vehicle. So if you've already been living in that state for 60 days, well, guess what? Your vehicle has to be registered from that day forward. So you could drive around on them, but what will happen is, this Vermont loophole is not a secret. Everybody knows about it. The police know about it. If they see a Vermont plate, they're going to be more suspicious. When they run the plate and they see that the owner has a local address, they'll probably pull you over. You'll get a ticket for not registering within 60 days or 30 days. The car might be impounded, and it's going to cost you money. So you may want to just switch it over quicker. The plates aren't designed to drive around on, let's put it that way. Last question is, can you look up the prior owner of a vehicle? Can I find out who used to own the vehicle? Well, prior owner information for a motor vehicle is protected under a federal law called the DPPA, Drivers Privacy Protection Act. And what that does is it keeps people from prying into your vehicle ownership and finding out who's the owner of a car. So let's say if you're driving down the street, somebody doesn't like the way you're driving, or you cut them off, they write down your license plate, or they even follow you to a parking lot and write down your VIN number from your dashboard. You don't want them calling up the DMV and finding out where you live or what your name is. That's privacy. So by the same token, if you buy a vehicle and somehow want to find out the prior owner, the same privacy laws apply. In every state, there is a form, a request that you can make to have that waived for certain what's called permissible use. The DPPA has certain permissible use cases where you can look that up. As long as you sign under penalty of perjury why you're needing it, what you're going to use it for. It's not for stalking. It's not for identity theft or anything else. They'll evaluate your request and maybe give it to you. The problem is it sometimes takes 2-3 months to get a reply back. Now, when we do prior owner contacts, you'll see we can look it up because we're a licensed private investigative agency, so we can use that for certain legitimate fraud purposes. And send out notices if somebody wants to have a vehicle transferred. But looking up a prior owner, there's no VIN search or title search on a vehicle where you can find out the name of the owner. A Carfax might give you the state that it was titled in, but it's not going to give you the owner's name or their address or where they live. And the other thing is, even when you do get the information from the DMV, if they approve it under DPPA, all they're going to have is the address that was on file when that car was last titled. That could have been 5 or 10 years ago, and the person may have moved since then. So in addition to finding the prior owner, you also have to look up where they live now. Did they move? So those are the most common questions. Keep an eye on our channel. We'll post these pretty regularly. We look at our YouTube channel to find out what questions people are asking, and we can't answer every phone call. We get 300-400 calls a day. But if you post questions either on our YouTube channel or on our help desk, help@cartitles.com, we answer as many as we can, and we give common questions some time on our channel so that everybody can benefit from questions that a lot of people ask. Appreciate you visiting, and we'll see you next time.